Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cheap Seats. It is international break. We did take a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back because on the weekend the Premier League continues. But we're also here because some team decided to fire their coach before the season ended because they're acting like they're a relegation side. I just don't know. But anyway, we'll find out about that. There's also drama at Real Madrid, but we're not going to talk about that. It just affects Spurs because they might not find a coach. But anyway, got a full house today, and we've got everyone rearing and ready to go because everyone's got something to say about this. But before we do that, remember that this show is sponsored by Classic Shirts ZA. So please do go and check out the kits. You can get some really good replica kits at Classic Shirts today. They also got an NFL. They've got some rugby kits there. But the kit for the day is going to make Wahi cry, which is awesome because I decided to remind. I thought so. The other problem was I thought Jean Emile would be joining. So I was like, yeah, Jean Emile is joining.
Why would this make me cry? This happened. This was in 90. This straddled our greatest ever season. So they wore this while we were at our best. It just reminds me how good we were.
Yes, but this is the. I looked at it, I was like, wait, remember once Liverpool wore Reebok, Cyrus? And so I was like, yeah, why not? Liverpool 1998 to 2000, Steven Gerrard wearing 28.
Yeah, let me tell you a story about this kit. There was a game towards the end of the treble season, and United were 2-1 up at Anfield, and Paul Ince scored an equalizer in like the 91st minute. And that game ended 2-2, and Paul Ince celebrated like an absolute night of the treble. And, well, the only doers is him. He didn't deny the treble.
Cool, but you can get that kit if you're a Liverpool supporter or just a supporter of football. You can get that kit at Classic Shirts ZA. The discount code is Cheap Seats 99, which is right there. Just let them know that we sent you. That's all that is. So yeah, please do go out and check them out. Please do subscribe to their Instagram page as well. And yeah, cool. So I'm going to ask Dean how he's doing, but I'm going to start with this. Antonio Conte is finally out. It took Spurs 8 days to get this man out, who, when he joined, they said he was a serial winner. But this is the second serial winner to leave Tottenham without a trophy. So, Dean, how are you feeling?
Sick of that joke, to be honest. I'm very annoyed.
It's a statement of fact.
Yeah, well, I'm sick of it. So
he wears the wig, he fixes games.
It doesn't matter. So, I mean, the way I'm feeling about it, Conte's gone. I think it's been coming for a long time. Even before he made that post-match interview after Southampton, I think throughout the season, his demeanor's really dropped a lot. It wasn't the sort of fiery Conte that we saw on the bench there. He had a lot of personal issues as well. Like his family's still in Italy. One of his really good friends passed away. He's got his own health issues. So I don't think we saw the best of Conte so far this season, and it sort of culminated in exactly what happened at Southampton, throwing away a 3-1 lead. Going after pretty much the entire club in that post-match interview. And in that post-match interview, there were a few things that I don't think any Spurs fan is in disagreement with some of the things he said, but I also don't think some of the things he said was sort of correct. I also think he basically admitted he couldn't do his job. I mean, basically, when he said that he sees a team of 11 individuals or a group of 11 individuals and not a team, as a coach, that's one of your prime responsibilities is to take 11 individuals and make them a team. So saying stuff like that, I think, was kind of the nail in the coffin. And after that was done, it was just a matter of time. I mean, it was international break, so it was a sort of good timing for it to happen. He went to Italy for a week again to spend time with his family. And as soon as he got back, it was sort of pulled the trigger. I did find it interesting that we're keeping his assistant coach on. And some of his sort of supporting staff, which was supportive. I mean, it was interesting because and it's quite telling. I mean, the best football we played probably this season is when Conte was sick in Italy and he wasn't around. And Cristiano,
but he was watching
was
over training, and he was dictating training, and he dictated the 11. I'm assuming
when you're in Italy, you're not dictating nothing. You're on holiday and you're relaxing.
I think that's another discussion to be had, because I'm not sure that Antonio Conte is a get down and dirty, place the cones on the training ground type of manager. I'm pretty certain that other people do that job for him. I think he's probably more like a sort of like a headmaster type of role, rather than. So if he was in Italy, I'm not sure that the day-to-day coaching would have been vastly different to how it would be when he was actually at the Tottenham training ground.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of things that we'll probably see. I think I'm more interested to see the reaction now that he's gone. Obviously, it's quite easy once it's gone, you see all these reports coming out. Like, there was reports in January that he called everyone into a meeting to discuss what was wrong with the players, and then walked out and said, "Okay, you guys must
told
chat
them
and
to
figure
fix
it out
yourselves." Yeah.
So there's a bunch of things where you're like, okay, as a coach, that doesn't really make sense. But I think it will be more interesting to see now how some of the players were maybe on the sort of bad end of Conte, like Richarlison, see how they react to this firing, and see if they can sort of pull their socks up and come to the good. So there's obviously a lot of bad things you can say about it. I know Wahid's going to say, "Oh, I told you so a year and a half ago. You shouldn't have appointed Conte." I still don't think it was a bad decision. But it's clear as day now what Spurs need. We need, as much as it hurts me to say, an Arteta type of coach, which is you're going to have to go through. Nagelsmann is my guy, but you're going to have to say 5 years of tough times, rebuilding, young coach, and then hopefully.
So basically, the same, like just the status quo for the next 5 years, because it's not as if you've been hitting the heady heights of going to cup finals and having championship runs. You just have to maintain. So when you talk about
they had the project manager, they had the perfect project manager and the perfect project manager for their project, and they threw him out the back of a few bad results, which made sense to absolutely nobody in the footballing world, and then have jumped on this like European
Wahid
ground, and have gotten to the point where right now on the 28th of March 2023, the best person to take over at Spurs would be Mauricio Pochettino. They've literally gone back where they started.
Maybe you don't know that there's some wise words that need to be heeded from a very famous song that says you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And this is the other thing. Like, Spurs didn't know. They just didn't know. They'd never been there before.
Did know. Levy just didn't want to.
You'd never been there before, and you're like, okay, he's done what he needed to do. We need somebody to take us further.
Let me get Kent into this. Kent, obviously on the other side of North London, but
Kent's laughing.
No, I'm laughing too. Like every time I hear Tottenham, I'm like, you know what, guys, it's a dumpster fire out here. But is it as a structural issue with Tottenham? Like because I listened to Conte's press conference and I'm like, yeah, these guys are not winners. Like everyone laughs at Arsenal for finishing fourth and lifting the trophy, whatever it is. But when Conte was saying those things, I was like, well, he's not far from the truth. Yes, there's a coaching element to it that Dean mentioned, but is it a Daniel Levy issue as well? Like, how much blame would you give it to Daniel Levy?
I just want to say, after the Southampton interview, I thought he echoed a lot what I thought the Spurs fans are grieving about. The management, Spurs are basically doing anything to get as much revenue now, and they're ignoring a lot of structural issues. But he doesn't take any accountability. I thought Conte, that is the only thing he didn't do in his interviews, take any accountability or responsibility for where the team is now, and basically blamed the players. The other point I wanted to make is Spurs finished fourth last season, and Conte was like praised for pipping Arsenal and pipping whoever else to get to that fourth spot, and they are fourth now. So we all know that there has been a massive decline apparently, but I think Spurs fans have a bit of an issue when Arsenal are doing better than them to where their
Ooh.
position is and
Ooh.
how they are as a fan base, compared to when Arsenal are doing worse than them. If Arsenal were not top of the league and Spurs were fourth, I don't think Conte would be in as much heated water right now. I think there would always be a chance that they can just get the Champions League again.
No, but that's a fantastic point.
That's a fantastic point.
It's an incorrect point, though.
I know, but I think there's a lot of truth. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Spurs are not looking like they'll win a trophy anyway. So taking out Conte, yes, you will need a rebuild, and it will take years. But that's why I think the only person possibly who could do it is someone like a Nagelsmann, who's a project manager. But then why did you sack Poch? Because he's exactly the same mold.
Well, we'll get to who comes back in, but Cyrus, what like obviously the point that Ken said about Arsenal being ahead, is it a question of perspective? Because in the same season, Chelsea's having a tough season, Liverpool are struggling, and it didn't look like Spurs were struggling to make top four, which is what the Spurs fans wanted last season.
But this goes back to a few other points, and possibly why Dean's brow is furrowed, is the sense that, yes, when you look at it from what Kent's saying, yes, they're in fourth place, pretty much the same as last season, but that isn't what the expectation was. And they did spend a little bit more now than they did last season. So, for a club that doesn't like to put the money out there, Spurs have dabbled a little bit more than they ordinarily would. So the expectation is maybe even third, but when you look at it in context, they've got Harry Kane, one of the best strikers in Europe, in their team, but a team that doesn't even have a striker per se, like Arsenal, is leading the league. So it gives you a real sense of, well, the neighbors are doing this, what's wrong with us? And then when you look at the nature of the bad results for Spurs, not just the performances all the way through, but when the results were not great, they looked horrendous. And that just showed a decline. And that's where a lot of the pressure came in. Not that people expected Spurs to win the league, but that they just looked as if they were lost. They never looked like they were likely to win all the games that they played in. When they played against big teams, they found ways to beat City, but and dubious draws at Stamford Bridge with hair pulling. Can you believe that happened this season?
I know.
But the other side of this is you look at it and you say, so what more do they need to do? Because clearly Conte was unhappy, and that is really the story of this. It's not necessarily about his under or overachievement or anything like that, but it was his happiness and how that has affected everything in that club. Because the more unhappy he got, the worse things got at the team. And players like Heung-min Son, he's not been anywhere close to what he's been in the past. And clearly that can almost be attributed directly to Conte, because it's just, you can see him, Kane, they're just not performing at the levels that they should be at. Weirdly, were things better under Mourinho? It's an odd thing, just from a culture perspective. I'm not even talking about it from a result perspective.
It's funny that he's outcasted two of the players almost that he brought in Spence and Richarlison. I don't know if Richarlison's been outcasted. He has had bad injuries, and I would say I can't imagine Richarlison making those comments about being left out were because he loved being sitting on the bench. Yeah. So he's clearly put him on, in the dog box.
Yeah,
but just before we move on,
Dean,
guys, hold up. Dean, before I add on to you, before you say, and I'm asking you, did Conte get the players that he wanted? And then you can carry on with, because that's my question. Because he's talking.
No, it's a good question.
But dude, you guys spent money.
I think yes and no. I think there were players that he definitely wanted, and they went out early and got it. I think Perisic, 100%. That was a Conte signing. You went and got him done, right? The other players, like what Ken said, like Jed Spence. As soon as we signed him, 2 days later, Conte came out and said, "Oh, it's a club signing." Same with Danjuma. I mean, the poor kid, he came in January. Did anyone even remember Danjuma? And he was like, he came out, he said, "I feel sorry for him," because the club wanted to sign him. So there were some signings which he did want. I think, like I said, I think Perisic was one. I think Basuma might have been another. But the part where he didn't get what he wanted is the key part where Spurs is lacking fundamentally, and it's in defense. We didn't get a centre back.
Was this an issue at the start of the season? Because at the start of the season, I think we sat here and said Spurs was a 10 out of 10 because they got what they wanted.
No,
100%.
That's not what
it was an
said.
issue. It was an issue from the start of the season, and that's where I think it started. It's sort of the gremlins started surfacing, where he said he wanted a Bastoni. Everyone knew we were after Bastoni in the summer. It didn't happen. He stayed at Inter Milan. There was rumors of Pau Torres, and there was a bunch of other names thrown around, and it eventually came to the point where we got Clement Lenglet on loan from Barcelona, which you look at, it's worlds apart, right? So I don't think Conte got exactly what he wanted, but he did get some of what he wanted. Now, fair enough. Conte is the kind of coach where he needs to get what he wants or else he's not going to perform. Everyone sort of knows that. But to what Kent was saying as well, if you have a look at that summer transfer window, it was kind of who won the summer transfer window. And it was like Spurs versus Arsenal. We both went and recruited quite early. We spent a decent amount of cash. We got biggish names, Jesus and Richarlison and Basuma. And we got all these kind of guys coming into the clubs. And you thought, okay, we're going to push on from here. Arsenal have pushed on, clearly. Spurs was, I think the expectations were still fourth, maybe third at best.
You to say that.
But the key thing is
following the
no, it does.
Following the
I've cried many tears. Don't worry, I think I'm over it. The key thing for me is the trophy part, and that is what's adding to this whole sort of detriment of the club, is the fact that we got knocked out of the FA Cup and the Champions League in a week. And the performances in the FA Cup versus Sheffield were shocking. And in the Champions League versus Milan, getting knocked out at home, can't even score a goal. And for Conte to bring on Davinson Sanchez on the 80th minute because he's saying, yes, if we score a goal, it's 1-1. But what happens, if we score a goal and it's 1-1, then we're playing with 4 strikers. It's not sustainable. That's why he brings on a defender. And it's those kind of comments that doesn't sit well with Spurs fans are saying, well, you haven't even got to 1-1. You haven't even got through, and you're already trying to think defensively. Like, that's not the sort of go for a trophy sort of feeling that we need. And that's exactly why. I think it's the FA Cup this year, the knockout of Champions League, Southampton game, he's interviewed. It's kind of just all happened within the space of 3 weeks, and it just sort of piled on all of this pressure. And I mean, ultimately it broke. And to be honest, I'm not sad he's gone. I'm not happy he's gone. It's more just like it's another season of being a Spurs fan.
Basically, Spurs.
Yeah, it's Spursy.
It is what it is.
If you look at who,
so we look at the next one, and I know you talk about Nagelsmann, and I get that he's probably available and he probably will look for the like that type of Spurs job because it's quite similar to maybe the Red Bull job he had and that's the thing. But I have a name and who has done exceedingly well this season in the Championship with Tottenham Hotspur links. That's Michael Carrick. And I think that at some point, Michael Carrick needs a shot at the big top because he's doing very, very well with Middlesbrough. When he took over, they were near the bottom of the league. They're now in third. They're challenging for the top. And he wouldn't be an awful bet for a Premier League side at some point. Maybe a job like Spurs comes too soon. But he would be a project manager who someone needs to go and back.
Wahid Vardy. Sorry, you cannot be poo-pooing Chelsea, bring in Frank Lampard.
He's always wanted to shovel their nonsense.
Aston Villa, and then say Michael flippin' Carrick is the next man.
Ashley Young was the
next
other one.
man.
No, hold on. Why I say that about Frank is Frank took Derby from 6th to 6th and then got a crack at the Chelsea job. Carrick has taken Middlesbrough from the bottom of the league to the top
of the championship.
You can say that about Ole.
Steven Gerrard. Steven Gerrard at like.
I'd rather get company than Rangers.
Yeah, and so I mean,
I think Carrick would be a good manager somewhere. The same way I said that Conte would be rubbish. We'll revisit this.
I don't think that Carrick will be a bad manager in the long term, but I think that Carrick at Spurs now is not the move that Spurs should make, nor should it be the one that we should be entertaining. So no.
Yeah, it's also very unfair because the squad that Spurs has now, I don't think any manager,
they're the same age as Michael Carrick, so it's also tough, you know.
Yeah,
Ole would also be a good option, you know. Just saying.
Just to speak on Dean's point, though, I was going to say, if you look at the 5 years that Spurs have fallen out the FA Cup, they haven't reached further than the round of, I think, 16. and they've been very bad teams. It's been Sheffield, I think, twice. It's been pretty much second half of the table teams. And I don't understand why Spurs were resting players in a cup competition when that should be where you should be putting all your energy in. If you are wanting to win trophies, why are you resting players in a game against Sheffield to get? If you win that Sheffield game, you would have had a great road to the final.
You answered your question when you've said, for a team who might want to win cups, Spurs are not interested in cups. Spurs are interested in money, and the money is not in the cup competition; it's in league placing. So,
and also getting South Africa to sponsor you as well.
Whoever will pay. This is you understand exactly why a lot of Spurs decisions have been the way they are, and it has to do with the fortunes of the club. I don't think there's a better stadium in the Premier League than the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium right now. And everything about Spurs is about accumulation of wealth. And yet it isn't necessarily about what happens from a success perspective. Because if you look at United, for instance, United focused on success and everything else came from there. And it's similar with Arsenal now. Arsenal are still a big club. They've obviously been in the doldrums for some time. But as the success comes, all of the other stuff comes with it. So you're able to then build on that.
To add on to that, Arsenal has this thing of losing to a bad team one FA Cup year, and then the next year they win the FA Cup. So we're looking at next season as another FA Cup, potential FA Cup win.
Arsenal had to do a whole mind shift and identity switch, though, where Arteta's coming with a whole brand new philosophy, and he's actually stopped that whole identity of what was going on during the end period of Wenger years and then Emery.
Exactly.
So there has been a whole new outlook to how the club should be run. That's what Spurs need, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Before we discuss who's going to fit the Spurs project and who's going to come in, Wahid, I know we haven't given you your moment. Do you still want to have your moment?
Nah, it's all right. I literally look back and I remember saying to Dean and him disagreeing with me vehemently. You were saying that there was a decision to be made, and I felt like Spurs panicked into that decision.
Cristiano Ronaldo panicked them into that decision.
I get you. You must thank him. But it was like a low hanging fruit. It was like it was an appointment that needed little to no thought and little to no planning. And I said at the time that it smacked of a panicky decision. And I back that statement so that it still seems to me like a panicky decision. They panicked into the decision and took whatever was available, rather than looking to the future and thinking, where's this project going to go and what type of footballing structure is this manager going to develop? I said it at the time. I still stand by it. I don't think Antonio Conte is there to build a footballing project. And I think looking back at the year and a half that he spent there, he wasn't there to build the Spurs footballing project. What he's there for is he's there for Antonio Conte, and he's there to maintain his own legacy. He's now thrown that under the bus, but he's not going to go to a club ever to develop a long-term identity and a long-term project. And I think that Spurs needed to understand that in the appointment of their next manager. And I don't think that they fully looked at that. So when people laughed at us, yes, Ralph Rangnick was a disaster. There's no like two ways about that. But that Ralph Rangnick could have been anybody. It could have been Michael Carrick on a long-term basis, or it could have been any other interim. But the idea was that, okay, write the season off. It's crap. It's going nowhere. Write the season off, and let's get the sporting project going somewhere. And I do think that showed. And I've been the biggest detractor of Man United's sporting project for a long time, and I've thought it lacked direction. But for once, that decision led somewhere, and there was direction, and there was thinking in that decision. And at the very same time, Tottenham made a decision that smacked of the panic, and I stand by that. I think that a year and a half ago, I did predict that this would end up like this. I thought that this would end in tears, and it's ended in tears.
The only thing that I'm going to say to that is that was in November. We were not in the summer. We weren't in a nice period of, let's just go shop around for managers. It was Nuno was there for 10 games. You're in the club. November, international break. what do we do? We have to act. And we were after Conte. He said no in the summer anyway. So it wasn't like there wasn't the due diligence done. But to some extent, I do agree with what he says. But at the same time, if you look at the situation the club was in at that point in time, it did make sense. So,
yeah. Okay. I just want to make one point here as well, because I think the other thing is, although there is a lot of truth to what Wahid says about how Conte operates, firstly, hindsight of the Man United project, yes, now it looks as if there was a plan to move forward, but at the time, it was an absolute dog show. So let's not get it twisted. From Ranić, you didn't know what the hell was going on. However, he was able to blood some of the youngsters who have still maintained their positions in the squad, by and large. The Conte decision is another thing here, in the sense that if you look at it let's look at it purely as what Spurs drivers might be. If you're looking at it and you're trying to say, okay, fine, we've got players who should be able to win things. Harry Kane, with all those goals, we can't just be building something for the future. We have to build something for the present. So we have to try and put a team around him in order to do that. This is where you start looking at the likes of the Paraticis and what have you, where their job is to make sure that the coach has got all of the weaponry available to him in order to do that job, and they failed there. And that's why, for me, Conte, yes, it was a bit of a disaster class, but at the same time, the guys behind the scenes absolutely failed him, and they did it for more than 1 year, more than 2 years even. He told them what he needed. They never got him that.
Do you think that absolutely failed him or somewhat failed him? Because I don't think you'll ever be in a position in a team, in a squad that's building. So when you're looking at Tottenham at the point where Conte was appointed, you're looking at a team that's broken, and it's going to take a bit of time to fix a broken team. It's the same with the team that Erik ten Hag just got. It's a broken team. It's going to take a bit of time. So you're not going to get to a point in a very short period of time where you have all of the tools at your disposal. You might have some, but I think that was a decision that needed to be made by Conte, to understand that I'm not going to have all of the tools when I want them, and this is going to be a process for me to get all the tools that I want.
So let me ask you a question. With Ten Hag this particular season, what did he change as one of the major things that has changed in that team? The defense, right? We're not talking about good mentality aside. You've got Lisandro Martinez, and you're not playing Harry Maguire or Lindelof or any of the other absolute dross. At Spurs, they're still playing those guys. Yes, you've got Romero, who's come in and been a totally different breath of fresh air. But how many of that back line are exactly the same guys that Conte was saying we need to upgrade?
Get rid of, yeah.
And,
no,
100%.
I get you. And that point stands. But at the same time, Man United don't have a Harry Kane. So
that's
exactly. No, Rashford aside, the whole of them. But
Ten Hag doesn't have all of the options, but neither does Conte.
Okay, to your corners.
But this is the thing, Wahid, in the sense that he didn't have to focus on anything else. So when you say they were trying to fix the entire broken team, he didn't have to fix the broken team. He needed to fix the defense. And he told them, let's fix the defense. What did they do? They bought midfielders. They bought other strikers, everything but the defense. So
center backs and
that's my point. So, and when we look at Conte and every single team that he's done well with, they've had very solid defenses. Yes, they might have bought the league in Italy a couple of times, but they still had good defenders in those teams too, right? They still had good defenders.
That is true. And that was the problem. You can't pull that lever. You can't pull that Juventus lever. Okay, cool. Now let's move on to, we've spoken about panic moves and panic buys, and I who's going to come into Tottenham, into that coaching seat? Nagelsmann, to me, feels like a panic. But
panic.
Yes, because he's the guy who's available. He's the guy who's around. It's
let's look at it more from. We're not going to hire a coach now. So let's look at it summer, right? Let's have a look at who we're going to get in the summer, because there's clearly no immediate solution. So who's available in the summer, and then we can have a look, because it's Nagelsmann, Poch,
yes,
Luis Enrique is apparently available.
Yeah, Ruben Amorim
from Sporting, although he's kind of said he wants to stay at Sporting, so we'll see. Maybe.
And
Zidane is there, but that's
and
terrible.
then you can also make a call to
Marco
Brighton
Silva
again to see if they need
and De Zerbi. I'm not going Carrick.
Not Michael Carrick. No, stop.
I think the top three are Nagelsmann, Poch, and Luis Enrique. So if you have to look at them, those will be the top three. Apparently, there's a 5-man shortlist.
Will they want to come to top?
Who would be your choice? Okay, like my Michael Carrick thing aside, who'd be your choice, Dean?
Right now, and I know it's very reactionary because he's available, but Nagelsmann makes sense to me because of I don't as much as. So let me put it this way: if any of those three had to come, I wouldn't be upset, right? But of those three, I would want Nagelsmann, and the only reason why is Poch is going to walk in there with a lot of expectation, which I think can fall very flat very quickly, and you then go back into the same sort of situation of, well, you've done it before, why aren't you doing it now? And it's just a weird thing if they come back, right? I think Luis Enrique is probably the next a really good option, but I don't think he hasn't really been tested, or he hasn't done a Premier League team. Finally, did Barcelona and the Spanish team, but he's going to want a rebuild team. He's going to want to change the way that things play, and I don't think he's very much like that older coach. He's done a lot in the past, and now he's walking in, and again, it's that expectation of, well, you can kind of do magic here. I think Nagelsmann, the man, is clearly. I mean, last week this time, he did still have a job, and now he doesn't have a job. So I think he's a little bit sort of dumbfounded at the whole situation, and that's why I appreciate the fact that he's taking some time, and there's calls of Real Madrid and whatever, but I think he's not walking in there with a massive expectation. The Bayern Munich, I mean, if you have a look at that project, they're still through to the Champions League. They're 1 point off Dortmund in the Bundesliga, which they should be. I mean, to be honest, I think it was just Tuchel was available and they saw that we might be looking at him, but whatever. And for me, that's why I think Nagelsmann works. I think I did the classic thing where he did and went and looked at how does the coach play and the setup and who do they like and players that they do like. And the way that he plays, obviously, there's a couple of things that he said which I think ring true with what Spurs need in terms of coach. One of the things he said was like coaching is 30% tactics and 70% man management. And I think that's more what Spurs need now is someone that can walk into that club, identify the strengths of certain players. Because the thing is, in that squad, you look at that squad, and I'm sure all of you can admit, it's not dross in there. Yes, there's a few areas that are really bad, like the defense. But you look at that front line, even if Kane has to leave, you still got Kulusevski, Richarlison's son. You've got Bentancur in the middle with Sarr, or you've got Basuma still there. You've got Pedro Porro on the right. You've got Destiny Adoje, who's coming from Udinese next year, who looks really good as a left wing back. You've still got Christian Romero there. So yes, defensively and goalkeeper is where you need to fix. So it's not a terrible squad. So I think he can walk in there, bring the guys together. The way he plays is quite narrow. He can go from like a 3-4-3, which is the way we play at the moment, to 4-3-2-1 is apparently what he also enjoys. So there's a lot of things which sort of tick the boxes, and I like the fact that he's a little bit younger. He's a bit of a longer term project, and that's what Spurs need. There's 2 years stint manager things just don't work. So for me, that's why I know it's very reactionary to say, oh, he just.
But won't you get tired of him? Because at this point in time, we've watched you go through Mourinho since Poch. We've watched you not give whoever that former Wolves manager was time. You only gave him 10 games. And then on top of that, you have Antonio Conte. And to Cyrus's point, and Wahid's point, it's a question of, giving him time, but obviously he had his own little situations of thinking. My thing with Nagelsmann is this. He comes out of FC Hollywood, which is Bayern. And does he want to come to Tottenham to do the project? Because we all don't know why he was fired at Bayern, which is a good thing for him. But to a certain extent, I kind of feel like I have a sense. Well, I kind of think that he was fired largely not because Tuchel was available, largely because they just probably thought he was just too, he didn't fit their club. And I think that's another thing that you have to look at, because if you look at Manchester United, they've got a guy who fits their club, who fits their little archaic history, whatever. This is how we play Manchester United football, even though he's tweaked it a little bit. But he's the type of guy who understands the seat that he's sitting in, right? And that's where Nagelsmann kind of doesn't fit by. But the other issue for you, Dean, is Real Madrid's going to fire Carlo Ancelotti. He's done at the end of the season. And so does Nagelsmann want to wait for that Madrid job, or unless if Conte is going to be the guy that they phone? But so you've got it's like the Liverpool sale. Manchester United muddied the waters. I kind of feel Real Madrid's going to muddy the waters in your thing. So you kind of need to make a decision quite early as to who the manager is, which is what brings me to Roberto De Zerbi. He's done well with Brighton with 0 to no money, which is what Daniel Levy wants. And no, but that's what Chelsea are trying to. Well, that's essentially what Chelsea's trying to do is different to what you guys need to do, because what Harry Potter got was here's money, here's a squad, here are these talented players, and fix it. Whereas you guys will be like, well, this is the 5 loaves and 2 fish that we have, make it work. See what you can do. So I'm more comfortable with you going with someone who's proven it in the Premier League and can prove it with stars who aren't necessarily top tier, but can bring them in, because I don't want you guys to go to Nagelsmann because he's the next shiny thing, because that's what you guys have always done. Who's the next shiny thing? It's been Mourinho. It was that Wolves manager whose name still escapes me, and then it was Conte. Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe be like Manchester United, take a step back, look and see. But my thing is Roberto De Zerbi is my thing, but I'm not telling Tottenham what to do. I want to go to Wahid and I'm going to go to Kent. Wahid, who do you see filling in this seat?
And not Carrick.
Pochettino. I'm a huge fan of Mauricio Pochettino. I'm happy to admit that I was wrong insofar as that I didn't want Erik ten Hag in the Man United hot seat, and I wanted Mauricio Pochettino there. I think he understands Premier League football, and I think he understands project, and I think that he'll understand what he's getting into at Tottenham. Whereas I think other managers might not understand fully what they're getting into at Tottenham. He's been there, he's done that, he's made them punch hellishly above their weight for a long period of time with limited resources at the best of time. And I think he would be the best man to step back into his old seat and get them purring the way they were. I think that there's some players in that team who are underperforming, who he could get back to the levels that they should be at. Kane, Son, that sort of thing. And I think that, like there's 2 types of management. One is an arm around the shoulder and one's a firecracker up the arse. And I think that Pochettino is probably the best person to go into that dressing room and figure out who needs what. Figure out who needs the arm around the shoulder, who needs a hug, and who needs the firecracker up the arse. And I think that if I'm an opposition fan, I'm not that unhappy about Nagelsmann or Enrique going there, because I think that in a season and a half it probably ends in tears again. If I see Pochettino go there, I'm thinking to myself, oh, that is now 7 teams that need to go into 4 next season. With Newcastle, with Spurs, with Man United, it's 7 teams that need to go into 4.
Yeah.
Whereas Enrique or Nagelsmann, maybe this gets played back to him in a year. I'm just thinking, this is much of the same at Spurs.
I'm with you, Kent. Who will scare you if they decide to get
Yeah, let's say who will scare Kent. Let's not say who Kent wants, because he will say Michael Carrick.
I think with the whole Conte thing, he did need the tools, and it was a immediate fix for Trophy because his contract was 1.5 years. He needed the tools immediately because I think, as Sarah said, Harry Kane, we don't know how long he still stays at Spurs for, and I think the project was let's try and get a trophy while Kane's still here. You've got 1.5 years, and he wasn't backed financially. I don't think even that window was everyone that he would his wish list. It would have been his wish list with the funds that he's been given. So that's the Conte project. With going forward, I do think you need a project manager. But if you go Poch, what will be different this time with the management above him and how they treated him to to how it was last time. What has changed in the last 5 or 4 years or 3 years since he last was there? So I want to know what is different this time to last time. I like Poch. I think he's a great manager, but I don't see what he will. He could just take Spurs to where they maybe were, but not elevate them past that. And that's what ambition as a club. Do you want to win trophies? Do you want to go further than you were, or do you want to just get back to where you were with Poch? So there's that question.
I think we need to ask the Spurs that.
Yeah.
Dean, what do you want now? Do you want to be challenging the Premier League? Do you want to be winning trophies, or is the next step just to being back to where you were?
Yes.
Like, is it realistic? Is it a realistic aim for you to say we want to win the Premier League?
Well, that question I don't think is dependent on a necessary coach. It's dependent on the management. It's not dependent on a coach. You can bring any coach there, and they almost destined to fail, I think. So with regards to Nagelsmann, he has coached at Hoffenheim and he has coached at Leipzig, and I think he can work magic out of not the best squad. In terms of a title-winning squad that you'd say, oh, that is a title-winning squad. Spurs will never have that, I think, unless they get bought by Qatari or something. But he could maybe turn something like what Arteta's done at Arsenal, where they haven't had necessarily a title-winning squad, but they've overperformed or there's something brewing. So Nagelsmann could do that, but he did that, I would say, to an extent with Leipzig, and he got Hoffenheim overachieving significantly. Yes, he is the new shiny toy, but that's only because he went from Leipzig to Bayern. Didn't have a bad stint at Bayern. He has won all their Champions League games, 8 out of 8. He's still top of the league. I know Dortmund are on their case, but I think his win percentage is 70%. So it's not to say he's failed. So I do think he's a strong contender, and Bayern, I do think it must have been just a cultural thing where they just felt like this is not the person to take us forward. Not because you've been a massive failure, but
he's a single man. That's one of the reasons why he got fired. They were like,
maybe
Ferrari,
he doesn't drink like enough German beer or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's something that is excluding to how good he is. So I for me as an Arsenal fan, if Spurs were to hire Nagelsmann, I would be worried, but I would rest back on, but they still have Levy there, so he will bugger that up, and not necessarily Nagelsmann. That's how I feel.
Yeah, and I think for me, that's what gives me comfort, is that if you want an Arsenal Arteta project, you got to spend. Arsenal spent money, like over 400 million.
Well, a year ago, like 1 year ago, to take it to summer before the season, I was having a proper go at Kent about you guys not making top 4 based on the money that you'd spent.
Yes.
And Kent was sort of going, just chill, just wait and see. It's brewing. And I think now I'm sitting there going, well, maybe he was right. It was brewing. But I had a proper go at him, but based on the money that was spent.
Yeah.
This season
weren't a fan of Kroenke.
But the same at Leipzig. They spent tons of money at Leipzig to get to where they are. That didn't happen by hook or by crook. They spent unreal amount of money being backed by Red Bull. And if anybody going to do
they've made huge sales as well, where their model is to also find talent and sell at huge profits. So their net spend, I would say, is probably quite respectable compared to what they've spent, but they needed initial injection in the form of Red Bull.
Fine, I get
that. But that's not going to happen at Tottenham. Daniel Levy's not going to do that.
Is that fine for the Tottenham model? Dean, are you happy to develop players and sell them on to Man United and Arsenal and Man City for the rest of the time?
No, obviously not. Obviously not. We're not a development club. We're not a Southampton. We're not a feeder club.
But you're being run like one.
But this is the problem now, and I think where he touched on a good point. The clubs around us are not getting smaller. They are getting bigger. You know, you've got Newcastle that are going to come back, and they are now very much a part of the top 6. Arsenal are straight there. Liverpool are going to be back. Chelsea are going to be back. City's back. United's back. Everyone's going to be back, and there's going to be 7 or 8 now that need to go into 4. And Spurs are on the outskirts. Spurs are least likely to finish top 4 next season, if even for the next 2-3 years, probably. And that's the problem. If you have a look at where we were Champions League final 3-4 years ago to maybe 8th, if you're lucky. and you look at the other clubs and how they've progressed. And that's also, it all adds to this sort of fire. And I think that is the biggest problem at the moment. So just to round this up, because I know we've been talking about it for a long time, I think Spurs get the coach that doesn't go to Madrid. And what I mean by that is, if Poch goes, we get Nagelsmann. If Nagelsmann goes, we get Poch.
What happens if Conte goes?
Conte's going back to Inter.
What happens with Harry Kane?
Harry Kane leaves in the summer. He must go. He has to go.
What coach is going to agree to that? A project without a striker.
But that's why...
you should get money for
Richarlison is your number 9. Richarlison becomes your number 9. Ooh. You play Son on the left. You play Kulusevski on the right. That is your then front 3. And you then maybe look at a Ivan Toney, or you look at a striker like that to come in. And then that's your front. You've had the best time you could have had with Kane, and you failed. So now you need to forget about life with Kane. Kane's gone.
Does Kulusevski stay if Spurs don't make top 4?
I think
he's on loan, right?
There's some contractual thing about the option that is not there if they don't make Champions League, I think.
Okay. He's very happy. Cool. So
before we close the show off, one last question for you, Dean, and then will be the end. Do you write the season off now? What are the new expectations now going forward with, I think it's Christian Stellini?
This is a random season all over again. Get Raniak in, write it off. He'll talk about open heart surgery or something like that.
So I think, realistically, I mean, I know, like Ken said, we fourth, but Newcastle have got 2 games in hand and they're 2 points behind. So fourth is not going to last long. Newcastle will win those games. Spurs probably won't. So best case scenario, Spurs finish 6th. I think we play Europa League next season. I wouldn't want to play Conference League. I think that's a drop too far. That then does not mean you get a coach like an Nagelsmann or a Poch. So Europa League at a minimum. I'll say it again. You look at the summer where you try and move Kane to the team who's going to pay the most. You get whatever you can, and you start looking at getting rid of that deadwood in defense, and you start rebuilding that defense. That's the only players I want Spurs to, and a goalkeeper, because Lloris needs to go back to France.
There's Mike Maignan of France, who's taken over from Hugo Lloris. He's been sensational for France over the past 2 things. If you're looking for shiny things.
Yeah, he'd wants a swap deal with Harry Kane and Dean Henderson. Tell me if that is not the most
ask for Lisandro Martinez. Transfer. If they want Harry Kane, ask for Lisandro Martinez. You'll thank me later, even though I wasn't a big fan.
Dean, maybe there's a bit of a reaction from the Spurs squad to because when you look at the points, I think it's still pretty head to head with Newcastle and Brighton.
Newcastle have tough games.
Newcastle have quite tough games. I'd rather have points in the bag than games in hand, as Arsenal fans have learned the bad way. And then, yes, you still have Kane. I think the big injuries will be Bentancur, and I don't know how long Richarlison is out for. But it all depends on the response from how the team reacts. But I think worst case scenario, Spurs finish 6th, and I think it just depends if you can edge out Brighton for that 6th spot. I think between you and Newcastle and Liverpool. So yeah, it will be a bit of a massive bottle job. You would have to go in the same directory as you are now to finish below 6th, I think, which would show that Conte wasn't the problem, I guess.
The other good thing, the game against Everton. The next game's Everton away. That's where I'm going to see, are the players up for it and they're like, cool, let's go, and like all of this nonsense about Conte not being like the players being fed up. Is that's true? But if they walk out of there and it's just a flat performance, have no idea what's going on, then shambolic. And
then it carries on in the same trajectory.
Yeah. The other good thing for you, Dean, is that Frank and Stevie G are still available if you still want to
go. Please hire Frank Lampard.
Can you imagine?
But outside of that,
at least Roy Hodgson's not available. Harry
Redknapp is.
Yes.
Patrick Vieira, not a chance.
Oh, that would be insane.
Yeah.
That would be. But anyway, let's close it out. Thank you very much, guys, for joining. The EPL is back this weekend. You've got
Harry
Liverpool
Redknapp bringing Nico Cronshaw with him. That's what I want to see for the rest of the season.
Yeah, but anyway, big weekend for the Premier League. You start with Man City and Leeds at 1 p.m. and then you've also got Arsenal and Man City and Liverpool. Then you've got Arsenal and Leeds. So it could swing a little bit. It's still an 8-point gap outside there. They've got a game in hand. But yeah, enjoy the weekend's football. Enjoy watching Tottenham versus Everton with Stellini. But outside of that, it's been a great podcast. And yeah, thank you guys. Goodbye, good night, and lesale kakafiso.